Hello, seekers. I am today with Jordan Carroll. Hello, Jordan. Thanks for being with me.
Ew, let's get weird, dude. Let's get weird.
Jordan is a remote work advocate. He's a remote job coach, in addition to being a content creator. Um, he also has a podcast, and the theme of the podcast is getting outside of the comfort zone, which is something that we'll be doing today. Yeah, so excited to have you on, Jordan.
Yeah, I got my chai. This is a mushroom chai tea with some oat milk. So I'm ready.
All right.
Bring the weird questions. I read them for maybe a minute.
Yeah.
So I'm just gonna whatever happens. We're gonna let go of all attachment to these answers.
That's better. It's like less inhibitions.
I agree.
All right.
I agree.
You give me an idea later on. We should do like a hot takes one, like where you're having eating spicy food, but for later.
It's like the like hot ones.
Yeah,
like
hot ones.
The hot ones.
Yeah. Alrighty. So do you want to start with the standard questions and then we go to the challenge?
Oh, this is your show, dude. This is your show.
Sure.
You take me through. Take me through however
you
want to try to make me uncomfortable. See if you can.
All right. Let's do it. I have decision problems, so that's why I'm asking you. Okay, let's start with the standard questions. So, Jordan, is there something you looked for but couldn't find, or had a hard time like looking for but eventually found?
Always, man. Always. My whole life, I feel, and this is like the human condition, is seeking usually something external of yourself, right? So seeking some sort of validation, seeking some sort of insight, seeking happiness. All these things have been constant themes throughout my life of I'm not where I want to be, so I have to get there, right? But the truth is it's all just one big journey. So the ego is just constantly putting you in a place of lack where maybe you think about all the things that you don't have. So for instance, like where I'm at in my business, where I'm at in my life, I'll find myself sometimes thinking about, my book that I'm writing and like the upcoming Kickstarter I'm going to do. And just like, oh, once that's done, like I'm going to have this.
Right.
And so it's like always seeking that next thing, that next accolade, that next kind of egocentric external validation. Comes through in the form of women as well for me, like seeking someone outside of me to make me happy.
Right.
But I think the more that I've done my own inner work, I've found that it's actually all inside, right? So when you're looking outside, you can be very easily clouded to see, oh, the shit that I need is like right here. It's been here the whole time. So an interesting thing that's helped me with that has been ayahuasca.
Right.
You familiar with ayahuasca?
Yeah.
Have you done it?
No, I haven't, but it's one of my fantasies to kind of go to Latin America. And
okay. Yeah, dude, I've got some places for you.
Right. Yeah.
I've done it 7 times. So, and I'm actually doing it next week with my father.
Okay.
Which is, if you can imagine, being uncomfortable.
Right.
That's what we're talking about. That's what we're talking about. By the time this is out, maybe this will already have happened. But
right.
Yeah, ayahuasca is a mixture of plants that, when mixed together and brewed, it's originally from the Amazonian jungle, has been used for centuries in shamanic and ceremonial rituals to allow people to kind of access a different state, right? It's a hallucinogen, so it activates DMT in your brain and maybe causes you to trip.
Yeah.
But the intention of doing it is often much deeper than that, than just tripping. It's like, okay, I have some intentions of some things I want to explore. I've got some things that maybe have been suppressed. Like I've got traumas that I've kind of swept under the rug and haven't evaluated since I was, a kid. So being able to access some of those memories, or being able to like put yourself in a different consciousness almost. That's super uncomfortable, but it's been a way of me seeking the truth more so of what's inside rather than seeking all these things that are external of me that just validate my ego.
Okay. It's interesting that you mentioned ayahuasca because that would be an answer to something that I have been looking for but couldn't find, which is I've been always like looking for a mystical experience, and I consistently been disappointed, like nature and like, going to, I mean, I was shouldn't say consistently disappointed. I think I like nurtured like this relationship now with nature where like I can appreciate it, but it's not definitely not the fantasy that I had in my mind where like, oh, I'm one with nature and thing of that sort. So I was thinking like maybe psychedelics or something like that would be like an avenue to this world. I haven't done it, but considering Latin America and all of that stuff to experience
it
that.
can be, but it can also be that thing again that you chase is like, and it does never meet your expectation. So if you have like a lot of expectations about what this is going to do for you, that can also cause issues. And then I know some people who, they go and do hallucinogenic drugs like every other weekend or something, and they just keep chasing this enlightenment almost. So it's paradoxical in a way. It's like you can end up chasing it itself when like it's actually meant to help you stop chasing things.
Right. Okay. So tell me why. So the next question you touched on this a bit. Why are they? What are the some hidden gems you discovered? I'm assuming ayahuasca would be one of them. But
so maybe I'll give you an anecdotal example. The first time I did it was in Peru. I got to Peru. I was in Lima, Peru, which is I believe it's the capital and it's one of the biggest cities, one of the most well-known cities in Peru. I flew out to Iquitos. Iquitos is like the ayahuasca capital of the world. I'm pretty sure like it's in Peru, but it's about an hour flight inland. And I get there and I get on a slow boat. I mean, this boat is like going down the Amazon River. It takes about an hour. We get to this village in the middle of the jungle.
Yeah.
And we get off, we go to this large like lodge, almost what it looks like on top of a hill. Nothing in this town. I mean, it's just a little village. Like you see the little kids on logs jumping off and having fun. There's one store in like the whole village, and it's just like it's a shack, and they've got Coke. Like Coca-Cola does it. I don't know what Coca-Cola has done. Its job in spreading itself into every place in the world, but it seems to be like the only constant thing if you go anywhere. But I get there, go up in the lodge. There's these little beds that we're in, and there's 4 of us. And so we're there for like 4 days. It's like a retreat where we do personal development stuff, a lot of like Tony Robbins exercises, and there's a facilitator there. And then she brought in the shamans for us 4. So the shamans come in the night that we're doing ayahuasca. We all sit down, and I have no idea what to expect. Totally dark. There's a couple of candles lit, and all of a sudden, you can't see anything. And they're chanting and they're singing, and they start bringing us up one by one. Take the drink of ayahuasca. Don't feel anything for about 45 minutes to an hour. Get up, take another one. Now at this point, starting to feel it. The room's starting to vibrate a little bit. Things are starting to get a little bit confusing. Music starts to play. The chanting starts to get louder. And all of a sudden, the girl next to me starts screaming. She starts crying. She's wailing. She's going through some serious shit. Like whatever she was seeing was very upsetting for her. And my first reaction was, why is she doing this to me? Why is she ruining my trip?
Right.
Now imagine that you realize that you've thought that way for your entire life, and you're realizing that for the first time.
Wow.
Other people's personal issues and the things that they're going through, you're so egocentric that you make it about you. And that was the first time I actually saw my ego in real life. And I literally saw the words of my thinking as a projection above me. And I like caught them like metaphorically and brought them down. And I looked at them and I was like, oh, I get it.
Wow.
I saw my ego take the situation, take the moment, and create a story about how it was personal to me when it had nothing to do with me. It was her going through her own stuff. So at that moment, I finally had been empowered with the awareness to say, I don't want to be like that. I want to be loving. I want to be compassionate. I want to be nurturing. So I started praying. And I think I was even talking out loud. Like everything was so confusing because at this point, there's this music. You can feel the connection between the other people. You can hear her screaming. And I'm tripping. Like I have no, like, it's just time is not existent. Like it's a weird vortex to be in. And I just start saying, I love you. I love you. Everything's going to be okay. I love you. And I just kept repeating that for her. And all of a sudden I heard everybody else saying it. And I don't know if they were, but I heard it. I heard them saying it too. And like, we were all thinking it. And then all of a sudden, they came over to her and they started trying to, they were like spraying some stuff on her and like fanning her with like this plant and stuff and like doing all this, ceremonial stuff to try to like cleanse the spirits or whatever the fuck you want to call it. And she started calming down. And I just kept noticing myself whispering that over and over and over again. And what I took from that was, for decades of my life, I mean, pretty much my whole life, like it's been about me.
Right.
And I take things so personally, and I try to, like, someone's in line at the grocery store and they're, they take a few extra moments to like get their wallet out because they're a little bit slower, or, they can't find the change, or it's just like, why are they holding up the line for me? It's just like, everything's about fucking you, dude. And so it was really intense to like have that experience and then be able to like try to integrate that somehow once I was back to normal life and say, oh, like I can now at least recognize how much I do this and then how much I can recognize it and then change that behavior.
Wow. That's amazing. Would you say now that you are the level of empathy that you have is above average?
Yeah.
Like, did you switch to the other side of the pendulum?
Well, I think I've always considered myself a pretty empathetic person. Like, I think I've always had above average emotional intelligence and empathy. And that's just from, my own self-awareness of, and people's feedback too. Like I get feedback from people, and I have a lot of really close friends that confided me in things. And, you take some of that evidence and hey, I'm emotionally intelligent in a lot of ways. The big thing for that moment was that it just gave me the awareness of the stories that I tell myself and the way that my ego interacts with the moments, because things just happen in life. They don't have any value or meaning. Like, we assign the meaning to them. It's like currency, right? Like currency, money, dollars, none of that stuff means anything unless we give it meaning. So when something happens, like you do something, I do something, and an external action happens, we are constantly creating the story first in the limbic system in our brain, the emotional part of our brain, to try to make sense of it. Right. And that's an evolutionary trait, right? Like, we needed to have that skill, because if you heard a rustling in the bushes, it could be a saber-toothed tiger, right? And you try to like create the story, oh, it's a saber-toothed tiger, I need to get the hell out of here, or I need to get my slingshot ready or whatever. So, it's kind of like the old, the old systems that we've developed as evolutionary traits, and just having that awareness, I think is super helpful.
What I mean is, like, okay, so I should rephrase the question. So you used to personalize people's actions a lot.
Still do.
Right.
All the time.
So the question is
awareness. Yeah.
Okay. So the question
is, the shift for me was awareness and being able to change it. Being able to, like, if you don't have awareness of it, you can't change it, right? Or changing it's going to be really freaking difficult.
Right.
So what the change was for me was the awareness. It's like, oh, okay, now I have an option. Like, when I see it, I now have the repetitions and the practice of being like, okay, I can actually see it.
Okay.
So I can change it.
Okay.
Does that answer?
Yeah, it does. So why do you think I'm gonna assume, okay, let me state the assumption first and then you tell me if it's correct.
Okay.
You think that psychedelics in general are underestimated in the Western world. Is that the correct assumption?
Misunderstood, I would say. Undervalued, underused, underestimated. Yeah. We could probably use all those words. Yeah.
Okay. So why do you think that's the case?
Well, I think there's been a lot of fear, and let's just take marijuana, for instance. Like, do you think marijuana is more dangerous than alcohol?
No, but somebody already told me, you know, I've already been through this.
Yeah.
Like, no.
Conditioning, right? Like,
yeah.
There were studies in the United States, I believe, with LSD, and it was in the 50s, the 60s, that was helping cure people coming back from war from their PTSD, right?
Yeah.
And I think there was a huge campaign against it, largely because of the money that is to be made in big pharma as well. So I think there's if you follow the money, I think that's your best answer of why. Because
right.
If you follow the money, it all leads to like big pharma and keeping people sick. And if you have an actual natural remedy, something like ayahuasca, something like mushroom, psilocybin, or you have something that isn't regulated in the pharmaceutical industry like that, there's going to be a lot of lobbies that go against it. There's going to be a lot of smear campaigns. There's going to be a lot of fear, and there's going to be a lot of misunderstanding that is spread intentionally by people that have the money to do that.
Okay, so think of
some. Well?
Yeah. I'm just checking the. I mean, of course, yeah.
It's a joke.
Yeah. Think of someone you don't like. Do you have them in the mind?
Do I have to say who it is?
No.
Okay. Yeah.
In fact, don't say who it is.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Now, tell me what are the best kind of strengths, and try to kind of like paint the most attractive picture of them.
Yeah, the person is super well traveled. They do a lot as far as like sharing knowledge and information, and probably coming from a good place at some level. And they're very open with their information, which helps a lot of people. So I know there are a lot of things that they do that give people a perspective of like what it's like to travel, what it's like to spend, you know, to be minimalistic with spending. So like saving people money, and just like sharing ideas. And I think that this person has done a really good job of that. Whether or not I like their approach and like their demeanor and their attitude, I think that deep down they probably come from a good place, and there's a lot of good things they do for the overall broader like digital nomad community and people who are, you know, trying to get into that type of space.
Okay, very cool. Let's take the bits that you don't like and tell me like your initial interpretation of this attitude, and then give me an alternative explanation.
Arrogance and selfishness and like disposition. Like, have you ever met somebody who, when you talk to them, it feels like you're not important at all?
Right. Yeah.
Like they're consistently thinking about everything else.
Right.
Except for the person that's in front of them.
Right.
And you happen to have that experience 3 or 4 times with them.
Yeah.
And every time that you walk up to them and talk to them, they don't care and they're going to move on. And so you've tried maybe 3 or 4 times. So that was my experience. And there was a level of kind of arrogance and seemingly like you don't matter to me.
Right.
That was just like, oh, okay. So this is how this person is. Not a big fan of that. The alternate explanation was it was during an event that that person was also somewhat in charge of. So when I think about how I've been at events, I'm typically short. I'm typically, you know, if I'm running an event, I'm typically not able to spend a lot of time with people, or I have a lot of things in my mind. Or, you know, the alternative also is, you know, maybe there was some family issues going on, or there was something that was really weighing deeply, a relationship that that person had that was in trouble, or yeah, there could have been many different things. So those could be the alternate explanations.
You're really good at this. You're really good at this. You're a really good good guest.
Yeah. Appreciate it, man.
Ideal working partner. How are they similar and different from you?
Start with differences. They're really good at finances and operations and numbers.
Okay.
I'm a great thinker. I'm a great like marketer. I'm a good salesperson. I'm a good like front man, like being in front of the scenes. But as far as like back end operations, finances, things like that. Let me give you the exact example of someone who I'd love to work with. His name's Danny Page. Talked to him yesterday on the phone. We're really good friends. And he is an operating partner at a company that basically buys distressed remote businesses who have received funding, but have never become profitable. And then he buys them, basically, you know, reoperationalizes, changes all the financial systems and brings them to profit, and then resells them basically. And so he's just very smart with in that world, where I'm very smart and kind of the more like woo, you know, kind of like creative stuff. So I'm more of a visionary. I'm more of like, I like to think about things and be creative and create videos and marketing, all that stuff. But how we're similar is how a perfect person is similar is through values. It's great communication. It's, you know, prioritizing freedom and flexibility. It's caring about empathy, caring about your team, caring about the other people that are involved, over communicating. Another person who I really want to work with, his name's Kumar, and he's actually moving down here, and we have a couple potential real estate projects that we're looking into, and he's a very financially savvy guy. And like, those are the kind of guys I very strategically look for to like try to partner with or explore long-term arrangements with. Like, even if it's not now, it's like I'm always seeding with them, like, hey dude, I want to fucking work with you someday. So just think of me, you know, when you're, you know, when you're doing this, doing that. And it's funny because it's kind of manifesting into truth, because Kumar is actually thinking about taking basically his whole operation in Canada and moving here in Mexico with it. So,
ooh, very cool. And it's does it have to do anything with remote jobs, or it's just real estate?
It's pretty much all real estate
Okay.
with him. Yeah.
Okay. Very cool. And I like that you intentionally seek partnerships. I love, you know, the idea of partnerships, and I talk about them a lot, but you know, my brothers started hating the word partnership because I use it often. Did you find that not too many people share this kind of appreciation of partnerships? Because for them, some it's like it's a headache. Like, partnerships for some are like, it's just like a recipe for frustration.
In the circles that I'm in, I find that there's more people that have partnerships than not, because growing at scale and being able to build something big, you know, being able to actually, like, if I could partner with somebody in my business, what I did was I ended up creating a personal brand business basically. And that becomes very difficult sometimes to incorporate someone else, because it's like, what is their vision going to be? You like, it's just kind of a weird dynamic. So if I'm creating something that doesn't have to do with my personal brand, I think partnership is like the best way to go. Now, does that mean that all partnerships are great? No. And dude, I had a partnership when I lived in Portland for an event company. I was working with one of my best friends, and one other guy. So there's three of us. And turns out like the best friend ended up not being in a place to really contribute in the way that he thought he was going to be able to.
Right.
And me and the other partner had to basically remove him from the business, which is very uncomfortable because he was one of my best friends at the time. He's still a good friend today. And luckily, like that all blew over and we ended up reestablishing our friendship. But it's kind of like a roommate, right? Like, I don't know if you ever lived with a roommate who is a really good friend of yours, but that changing the dynamic of how you interact. If you've just been a friend and you've been drinking buddies or whatever, and then all of a sudden you live together and you realize this person's an absolute animal,
right?
Leave dishes everywhere,
right?
And the whole living room's a mess. It's like, oh, now there's this weird tension because I didn't have that experience with this person before. It's the same with business partnerships where money's now involved.
Right.
So it's like, oh, okay, like now I'm seeing this person work. I'd never worked with them before. I like them as a person, but they're not getting shit done, or they're not holding up their end of the bargain. And you can also be a shitty partner too, right? It's like I can also come into a partnership and not be who I want to be for a variety of reasons. So I think partnerships are great, but having a partnership doesn't guarantee anything.
True. Okay, so how are we similar and different?
You and I, hair. My hair is a little bit bigger than yours. I've been growing it out for 7 months. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, I noticed actually. The last time I spoke to you, it was
a lot shorter. Yeah. I basically, when I got injured with my knee, which is another difference from us, I just had knee surgery. I don't know if you've had knee surgery.
No, I haven't.
There you go. So there's no difference.
Yeah.
So I just had knee surgery in December. And I decided I was going to grow out the top of my hair until I could play basketball again, which will probably be December of this year. Okay. So a full 12 months. We'll see where it gets. Other ways that we are similar, I think, at least, is in the way that we are curious. You and I are both very curious about the world. We're curious about how things work. We're curious about what other people think. We're both probably very esoteric. We're both probably very weird in the sense that we think about things that a lot of people maybe don't think about. Even like the way that you reach out to people, although I because you'd send me messages before of like your blogs and like how you reach out to people and certain things, like the creativity in which you use to reach out to people is the same type of creativity I have. You tend to be a little bit more long form. So that's maybe one difference, but I think in the attitude in which we see the world, obviously there's other demographics, things like where you live, where I live, where we're from, things like that, but those are much more obvious. So yeah, I'd probably say those things. We both have an appreciation for art and creativity and like putting ourselves out there in a way that's not inhibitive. Like having a conversation like this would terrify a lot of people, that other people could see them talk about ayahuasca or
emotions, God forbid.
God forbid, like any of that stuff. Like I don't know, I just don't have any shame around that anymore, and I feel like there's hesitation for some things that I do just to make sure that I'm aligned, but if something's aligned with me, like I don't care who sees this. Like I'm not beholden by like someone hiring me or not hiring me based on what I say on this podcast, which I think is cool. So I think those things. But you're also talent-wise, I think you have a different skill set in your brain. I think you're much more like analytical in the sense of like being able to dive into pieces of data and being able to like research, which is one of your main skills and talents. Whereas that kind of stuff like doesn't really, like your methodology for being able to research and being able to like find things is something that I don't really have.
Oh, really? Interesting. So how would you describe your approach then to knowledge? Because I'm assuming you're very much interested in knowledge. So how is your approach to knowledge then, if it's not through diving deep?
Well, I mean that more in the sense of like work. So like if I need something researched for like a task, I'm not going to necessarily spend the time to like figure it out. I'm going to delegate that. when it comes to knowledge, like a lot of the knowledge that I get in the world is just through talking with people and traveling.
Right.
Like the past 5 years, I've lived in 15 different countries. So like my knowledge, I feel like comes much more from walking around, talking to other people who, especially people who've traveled a lot, and getting into deep conversations like this. Like this is my knowledge source for the most part. I don't really trust like mainstream news or yeah, just like there's a lot of, I don't know, like there's so many ways that I think there's so many difficulties in finding reliable news sources. So I don't necessarily rely on news for knowledge. I rely on intentional conversation.
Okay, let me ask you something about this, because this is something I've been thinking about a lot. So let me start with this. So whenever two people have a conversation, there's two brains, right? And in my brain, there's like a world of knowledge, and in your brain, there's a world of knowledge. And there are challenges that I have. Let's assume that they're locks. There are keys for those locks inside your brain, and vice versa. But the challenge I'm thinking of is that it's very difficult to actually ask the right question or find that key that would unlock the challenge that I'm facing. Like, I'm sure that if I had access to all of your knowledge, my life would be different, because I'd have, things would pop out, and, obstacles would be overcome. But the question is, because we have limited time, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever, it's hard to so I guess this is not really a question, it's just an observation, and then say whatever you want. Have you thought about this before?
Yeah, most people spend their time trying to find answers to the wrong questions.
Okay.
That's what I've observed. So in the context of what you're saying is like, it's always going to be difficult to unlock certain answers if you're asking the wrong questions. And that's on an individual level or on a one-to-one level, right? So the better you can get at asking someone questions, and also the better you can get at asking yourself questions. Because I find that you can very easily run in the wrong direction, looking for an answer that's not aligned with what the question should actually be for you. So an example of that, let's just use an anecdote. So let's say that you're a job seeker, you're looking for a remote job, and you start to think in your head, man, like I want to start traveling, I want to start doing all these things. So like, how can I get a visa to work when I'm traveling to different countries? That's already like 10 steps ahead of yourself. Like the question at this stage is not about visas.
Right.
It's more about like your belief systems, and like, do you actually believe that it's possible for you to do this? What are the types of skills that you have that could be transferable to remote positions? What types of companies would allow you to work remotely from anywhere to even do that travel? So a lot of people, one, they might get ahead of themselves and start asking questions that aren't even relevant to the current moment. And it can be very difficult to navigate the world if you're constantly asking the wrong questions, just like it can be very difficult to navigate a conversation if you're asking someone questions that don't actually unlock those keys. So I think it's a perfectly reasonable observation, and I find that it happens on the individual level as well as in conversations.
So okay, give me a question that you should not have pursued, or like you, looking back, it was like the wrong time to pursue it. Or wrong in any sense.
Yeah. So there were times early on in my business, there are plenty of examples of this. I'm just trying to give you a really specific one. There were times really early in my business where I felt that I needed to delegate the tasks that I was doing. So the question I was asking myself was basically like, how can I get rid of this responsibility? And so I hired some people on Upwork and had them try to figure out how to do it in the way that I wanted to do it. At the time, the better question would have been, how do I do this?
Right.
Because I needed to know how to do it first before hiring someone else to do it.
Right.
If you don't know from a high level how you want it done and what the end result is. So if I would have asked myself, okay, like what is the process and what's the end result, as opposed to how do I just get rid of this responsibility in general, I would have looked at it at a more granular level, more detailed level. I would have been able to build maybe an SOP or build some type of guided way for that person to go about the task. And then I would have gotten maybe closer to what I wanted, but I didn't even know what I want. I didn't even know what I wanted, like as a result. I just didn't want to have to do the responsibility in general.
Right.
But if you don't give somebody a clear outcome or like an idea of what you want, then you've just wasted a bunch of money.
So this is actually kind of very relevant to another question that I wanted to ask you, and I'm not sure if it's in the list or the hidden one, which is, you're someone who hires a lot on Upwork or like delegates a lot. When do you say to yourself, okay, I'm gonna let someone else do it? And when do you say to yourself, I want to learn this skill?
I think I want to look at that in two ways. One is, what's my current skill level with this thing? What's my appetite? Like, what's the benefit of me learning further? And then what's the cost benefit analysis of having someone else who's an expert do it, or someone else who's much more talented than myself do it? So I kind of look at those from an intuitive level. Let me give video editing as an example. So I'm at a place in my life where if I wanted to sit down and edit a video, I could go on iMovie on my MacBook and I can edit a video. And I did that for like the first 100 videos, something like that for my YouTube, whatever amount. And I got good at editing on iMovie. I got okay at it, right? But the diminishing return for me to continue to learn editing meant that I would have had to download probably a new program like Premiere. Probably would have had to sink dozens and dozens, if not hundreds of hours into learning a new program. I would have had to actually get better technically as an editor, whereas I could hire somebody who's already at that level for much, if you look at the time and cost that I would have invested for much less, and I don't have to put in all that time and effort that can now be redirected towards something that's more revenue generating or whatever. So I have a video editor that I use, and it's a subscription service. It's a monthly charge, and it's unlimited videos that they'll edit for me.
Okay, share with me the things, because that's actually was one of the things that I was thinking. Should I learn video editing? Should I delegate it? So I'm interested in the name of the company or whatever.
Video Husky.
Video Husky. Okay.
Yep.
Sure. Video Husky.
Yeah, I've got a referral link if you ever need it.
Right. Sure. Video Husky.
Discount for you. Discount for me.
That's good. So lots of things are coming out of this interview.
Wouldn't have had it any other way.
Right. Okay. If you can facilitate a conversation between any two people in the world, living or dead, who would you choose and what would you ask them?
Yeah, I mean, right now, God, this is probably one of the hardest questions that you have, to be honest, because there's a altruistic side of me that wants to like look at the war in Ukraine and be like, oh, we need to like get Putin in a room with, the president of Ukraine, or we need to like facilitate conversations between them. But I don't know, like that seems like I'm saying that because I'm supposed to say that. So I don't know if I really like that answer.
I have a solution for you. Give me the more like the answer that feels right, and then the answer that you want to go with your desires.
Yeah, that one feels right, where you get Putin in a room with, because they've been trying to meet, I think, right, for a while. I ended up trying to not follow this because there's war all over the world. Like it's not like this is the only war that's going on. I think geopolitically it holds a lot of weight in what happens in the European Union, and obviously what happens in NATO and all these things. So people have given it more attention, but there's fucking war in Syria, there's war in Yemen, there's war in China, there's different places where there's a lot of human rights violations and things that are happening, that if you just focus on like this one war that's happening that's been on TV, it's like the only one that's on TV. It's kind of like, oh wait, like why is the media deciding to show this one and not the others? And you again follow the money, follow all that stuff, and you'll find some answers to that. Still an absolute tragedy. And what I would love to have is, because of some of those implications that would spill over into other parts of Europe and spill over into NATO and all these other things, it would be great to get them two in a room and facilitating the conversation. I don't speak Russian, or so I might have a difficulty with that.
Right.
But I've only got one question to ask him.
No, you can ask whatever you want. Ask so many questions, or any topics, or whatever. Yeah,
I mean, I think the question is, how do we make this go away?
Right.
How do we make this work?
Or what do you really want?
What do I really want?
No.
As far as this question, or what?
No. Yeah. What's like Putin? What do you really want? Like, if there's a way to, and if there's a way to ask that question, this is what I want from the question, but it wouldn't be a good question to ask. I would ask something along that would give me the answer to this.
If you could get the actual answer. That's also the other part of this question, is like, this is assuming that people are going to be truthful, or they're going to answer in a certain way. So yeah, I mean, it would be great to understand like what they truly want, but yeah, that's a tough one. That was the first thing that came to mind, just because it's on top of the mind of the world right now.
Okay, how about the creative bit, the desire bit, this would be so fun bit.
I think it would be really cool to get Isaiah Thomas and Kevin Garnett in a room.
I know Isaiah Thomas. Who's Kevin Garnett?
Kevin Garnett he started his career with the Timberwolves. He's a power forward. He's in the Hall of Fame. Was part of the three-headed monster, the big three in 2008, that led the Celtics to the World Championship. And I'd love to see KG and Isaiah Thomas chat about what it takes to be successful, or talk about even just like have them reminisce on stories about like their time in the NBA and different things. And this is Isaiah Thomas present day, the one he's 5'9". There's an Isaiah Thomas.
Right. I was thinking of
he played for the Pistons.
Right.
For the Bad Boys, and that's a completely different Isaiah Thomas. So the Isaiah Thomas today is the one who's been, he was an MVP candidate a number of years ago with the Celtics, and then basically fell off after an injury, and has been trying to make his way back to the league. And he's just he's my favorite player because he's 5'9", and can put up 30 points, in a second, in 10 minutes. So I just love to hear that. Yeah.
How tall are you?
I'm taller than him.
Okay.
I'm probably I'm between I'm probably like 5'10", 5'11".
Okay. Sorry, go ahead with the
yeah, that's it. I mean, it would just be cool to get them in a room to talk about basketball and talk about like stories on the court. And I find professional sports players, in particular NBA players, because I'm such a big fan of the NBA. I find their conversations with each other fascinating.
Right.
So like I listen to a lot of podcasts that are basketball specific and are basketball players talking to basketball players, because they have a different way of talking to each other than they do the media. So you just see a completely different side of them, and you just get to hear a little bit more about their success and all the different things, which is really fun.
Right. Very cool. Okay. Now for the awkward part. Let's do it. So just to let the audience understand what's going on. So I thought, since your podcast is about, there's a theme of going outside of the comfort zone. So I thought a good thing for this, for our interview, is to let you do something that is outside of your comfort zone. So I told you, I suggested some stuff, and then I also told you, like, okay, how about you also think of something?
Think about it. Yeah.
And you came with?
Yeah. So let me give some context. I love stand-up comedy. Stand-up comedy is one of my favorite things in the world to watch, to be in the room. When I'm on YouTube or I'm on like social media, if you look at my feeds, a lot of it's like comedians and they're like little bits and stuff.
Yeah.
It's a fascinating skill because there is an actual science to comedy. It's not just like people trying to be funny and they're funny. Like there's an actual science that goes behind the writing of comedy, the delivery of comedy, the psychology of the room that you're in, and how to, you know, get people on your side, how to bring people back. And I just find it to be, I love doing public speaking. So when I first started stand-up comedy was actually in 2017. I did it for about a year. Well, I did it for about 6 months, and I did improv comedy as well. And I recently just started getting back into it after 5 years. So I did it last night at an event, maybe like 100 people or something. I don't know how many. Really tough fucking room, like really bad, like no acoustics. It's like outdoor. Tables were all disparate. There's tables like outside of the event. It'd be dead, like so hard to get laughs. It's a very humbling experience when you go on stage and you put everything into it, and there's like ha ha ha, like a couple of chuckles. So that was fun, although yeah, it can beat you down. So, but I was pretty happy with how I did. So I'll give you like kind of a quick version of the set. It's not going to be the full thing, but yeah, I'll just kind of go with some of it and try to do it virtually. So I'm single. I've been single for close to a year. Absolutely hate dating. I hate dating now because so many girls have sugar daddies. Have you noticed this? Yeah. 10% of the female population between ages 18 through 44 have either been a sugar baby or are currently sugar babying. And I found that on the internet. So it's true. So when I go on dates now, I'm always wondering in the back of my head, am I going up against a guy who's already paying for her car insurance? Like, I can't compete with that. Like, I'll buy you dinner, but I'm not giving you a weekly allowance like you're my child. I'm a sugar daddy on a budget. I'm a Splenda daddy. There you go. So that's a snippet of my being single joke. So one of the things that I add into that is like before, when I start out, I'm basically like, I'm single and I look for people in the crowd that are single. Anybody else single out here? And I'll have some banter with the crowd first. So I'll pick somebody and say, how long have you been single? Like, do you do any dating? How's the dating life? All that stuff. And I get kind of some of that feedback first. And then I'll go into my experience. And then after that, what I end up doing is like, ask, hey, like, are there any sugar babies in the crowd tonight? Like, to see if there's any girls who are willing to admit that they have a sugar daddy. There was none last night. So none of them raised their hand. And then I have like a little bit about that as well. And I like in my head, I'm like, okay, some girl at some point has to admit this. So if that ever happened, that would be kind of fun too, to like have a banter with her about her sugar daddies and how much they pay her and all that stuff.
Wow. Yeah, I am very intrigued in stand-up comedy as well. And in my head as well, it's like one of the biggest fears for me. Like it's one of the most intimidating things to do. So do you remember like the first time you did it? Like what was your thought process?
Yeah, I do. So yeah, it was back in 2017. I was taking a class. So I took a comedy stand-up class in Portland, Oregon. And we took like, I think it was like 6 weeks or something. And like every week we'd get assigned certain things, and you just kind of like learn the exercises that can help you prepare. And then at the end of this class was a show. So the show was about 250 people. And I had it recorded. I can send it to you if you want. Yeah. I'll definitely do that. So the process for me at that point, see, the big difference is, dude, I was such a different person then in 2017. Like I was mentally different. I was self-esteem and confidence wise very different. I'd had a lot less public speaking experience. So now it was a surprise because I just remember the nerves and like just the nervousness in general of that last show in 2017 and how deeply like petrified I was. And then this time, like I was nervous, but once like the moment I got up there, I was like, oh, I'm in control. Like this is easy. And it's funny how that's shifted because a lot of the transferable skills that I've gotten in between this time and a lot of the confidence building, a lot more self-esteem, a lot more assurity in myself has created a good dynamic to be able to be a performer.
Right. Okay, so this is a something that you don't have to do now, obviously, but I would wish somebody would do it, and I think you would be a good candidate for this because I remember you've written before about how education is, it doesn't, college education doesn't give you the things that you need in life, which one of them is like remote job if you're applying for jobs and whatnot.
Yep.
So I had this idea of calling, someone's university. Like if it was me, I would call my university and I'm like, okay, I am disappointed by the return on investment of my education. I'd like a refund, please. But I don't have the nerves to do it. Yeah. So if you ever want to do something crazy, do that and tell me how it goes.
That's interesting. So I will say this. I think I got a great return on investment on my college education.
Okay, that's good.
Like, I'm not against college. What I'm frustrated with is in the traditional educational system, and this is all the way from like kindergarten up, like whatever, the curriculum is not really designed to be as helpful for real life. And it's actually more so in like the public schooling system at younger ages, like high school and middle school. I got a lot more out of college, but I also got a lot more out of college because I put a lot more into it. I think a lot of experiences, what you put into it's what you're going to get out of it. So if you expect to just go to class and do the minimum and then have this degree and then life to be easy, that's not the reality of it. I was part of many different clubs and organizations. I got very involved on campus. I used my mentors who were all part of the College of Business, and the place that I went to school, like more so than the education, just like the relationships that I created were extremely valuable. And I can't even put a price on some of them. Like they're just like, last week, I talked to one of my teachers in college. We have a standing quarterly call. I still talk to him. He's the one who got me my first job.
Okay.
Because he directly introduced me to a recruiter at IBM directly, because I went to his office during office hours after class once every few weeks, just talk to him about my life, talk to him what was going on, especially like the last year of college.
Right.
And my concerns about like finding a job and all these things. And then he was the one who actually introduced me. So if I hadn't gone to college, that would have never happened.
Right. So let me rephrase this, or to the idea of the curriculum then, not the actual relationships that you create. How happy are you with the content, the educational content of the curriculum? I mean, you're a good case because you studied marketing, right? And you've worked in, like you used the marketing skills. So how kind of useful was it?
It was okay. I mean, I felt like some of it was relevant. I felt like some of it, again, it's really hard to remove the curriculum from the rest of the experiences. Say that I was in a group project, for instance, and then that gave me an opportunity to make some relationships with some other students and work with them on some project. Like, I could see that project not being useful in the real world, but the idea that I was gaining interpersonal skills by dealing with other people who maybe aren't going to do the work, or are maybe going to, like, that was valuable.
Right.
So it's not, it's hard to look at curriculum at a face value, because there's so many other variables that are still involved when the curriculum is being deployed. Being in those classes, getting the energy from the teacher, like all those other things. But yeah, it wasn't, there's much more of it that's irrelevant, I think, as far as like directly applying it to certain things. You can't necessarily get the experience until you just get it. That's the tough part about university, is like, it's simulated. It's not ever going to give you the actual experience of being in the world and working.
Right. Let me then push back a bit on this, and because I've heard this kind of like logic before. It's like when we're critiquing education, is that it's not the content, it's actually the relationships. But don't you think that you can get the relationships through a different means? Like, I'm thinking myself, if I ever...
Don't you think you can get the curriculum and the content by different means?
Yeah, in a better way.
So that's my point. The relationships are the thing that is much harder. To have the relationships in one place, in an environment where you share the context of being in a university, in the dorms, for instance. I lived in the dorms the first year. I lived with two other guys, lived on this floor. The guy who lived next door to me, one of my best friends, still talk to him to this day. Like, the whole collegiate experience for me was much more built around relationships and organizations outside of the curriculum, which would be much harder to find outside of college than the content. The content is much easier to find than the environment in which the relationships can be facilitated and can be built over the course of a number of years in the same city, in the same classes, and those types. Because you go into class, like, oh, I had a class with him last year. All of a sudden it's like, oh, okay, cool. Now you talk about this, and now that person might be a executive level at a remote company now, who I can tap into and say, hey, like, who do I talk to about sponsorship for my book, or getting my client a job there?
It's interesting that you're saying that because they're extremely well traveled. And you've been through a lot of experiences. So the fact that you say that the college experience is hard to get outside of college makes me like want to rethink my stance. I mean, perhaps like one of the biggest kind of obstacles for me is the college tuition. Look, if I'm thinking of like, you have like children and they want to give them the best education, like, I have online resources that are way better than the college, what they get in the college. And I was thinking maybe the other stuff, the interpersonal stuff, I can supplement that through clubs and social stuff.
And I think that that's fair. I can only speak from my experience, like, I can only speak from like looking back and looking at the steps in which my career took, not having the college experience, I think would have been much more difficult. It would have been a lot harder to be where I'm at now, or it would have, there's just things that wouldn't have happened in the way they did, which is the case for any fucking butterfly effect, you know,
right.
Take this one thing out and then all of a sudden everything's different. So
right,
maybe I would
right.
have found maybe I would have found a different way, but it was truly one of the things that also kickstarted my sociability and my communication skills. I was a supreme introvert and socially anxious in high school.
Right.
Like hugely.
Yeah.
Very nervous around other people. Like by throwing me into college in the dorm situation, I had to be social all of a sudden, or I had to like find a way to like learn on the fly, like how to communicate with others who had no idea who I was before. So I could actually be someone different. I could be like, okay, like I'm actually can be social. I can change this identity of me that feels like it's stuck in high school and it's not growing. So dude, even that for me, and then moving away, you know, from my home, you know, like moving 3.5 hours away from my home and not having, you know, your parents there. And then at one point I had 3 jobs in college as well.
Right.
I was also like, I was also awful at times. Like I just drank a lot too. And just like, I had, you know, many bad experiences.
Yeah.
So that's not to be undersaid, but.
Yeah. Okay. Let's to the next question, which is, I actually forgot the chain of events that led us here. So I'm not sure which section are we in. Okay, let's head to the custom questions then. Okay. So how many clients did you turn down and what were the reasons?
In my life, you mean?
Yeah.
I can't even tell you. I don't know.
Because there's too many.
Yeah. There's a lot of people I've talked to and pointed them in the free route, or just said, hey, this is not a good fit right now. Here's why. Often, I mean, people have to be in a certain place to work with me on the coaching front. That's why I'm also trying to create these other resources for people that are lower investment, but don't require any of my time, you know, or additional time, but they can get access to the information. Like that's why I'm writing my book right now, because that's going to be a much more accessible way for people to get the information from my course, from like all the different things I've done, and basically get coached by me through a book. So that I see is like the really big next step for me, so that when like that's actually my lead, like I'm going to lead with that as opposed to lead with coaching. So as far as coaching, yeah, there's a lot of reasons. People are just not in the place financially. People are not a good fit based on their job or like where they're at in life. I don't know. There's a lot of reasons.
So I'm going to explain to the audience now. This is actually one of the, things that I love most about you is actually you turned me down as one of your clients, and since then I was like, damn, that's very kind of admirable, and I don't know, I just really appreciated that. Like, can you tell the audience what? Oh, I mean, I don't know if you remember the. I want to see if your recollection is similar to mine, but go ahead. What's your version of events?
Yeah, it's definitely putting me on the spot. I remember we had a conversation, and you were mentioning where you're at, and one of the main things I remember was that you had some very specific requirements for what type of company that you wanted to work for, and it seemed like there was kind of some lack of clarity in places where I felt like you needed more clarity for us to work together. So there's some preliminary things that I look for in people, that if they have like just a really clear picture, and then they have also a means financially where it's not going to like put them in a place where they're going to be so uncomfortable that that's what they're worried about rather than finding the job. So I don't remember the exact reason at the time, but I think there was kind of a mix between kind of lack of clarity and exactly what you wanted. There was some other, I think there might have been some other arrangements too that you were still working on, like, or you're trying to you had a few contracts that maybe were pending, or a couple of people that you were still talking to. So it was just like, yeah, there's all these things in flux. Like, you're going to figure it out. I don't think you necessarily need this coaching program right now. Here's the details of it.
Right.
We can come back to the conversation if we want, if these things are more clear, but until then, it's probably best that you continue on the path that you're on.
Right. So my recollection is a bit different, is that I was telling you how you asked, one of the questions that you asked is how much do you believe this program will help you, or something like that.
Yeah.
And I said something along the lines of 7. And for you, that was like so low. You needed somebody who would like, you said that the biggest kind of like indicator for how successful the program will be is the mindset for the person, and how much, so you thought that I'm not, you know, and I was mentioning something that I wanted, you know, I'm thinking, okay, maybe I should learn SEO. And instead you're telling me like, okay, yeah, maybe, and then you tell me, maybe SEO is the good thing for you. Just, you commit to it and go along. And I know it was so refreshing to see somebody who's not trying to like shove their solution down your throat.
Yeah.
Which is something I totally believe in. Like, there's no like one solution that, you know, works with anyone. So I was like, so yeah, from that moment, I was like, I like Jordan. I really like Jordan.
You didn't like me before that, though.
Yeah. That was the moment. So yeah, let
me pull that back real quick too, because I think when I talk about lack of clarity, that's what I meant, was like, there were multiple avenues in which you felt like you could go, but you weren't sure. And then also the lack of clarity also shows in the program. It's like, if someone comes to me and is a 7 out of 10, and that's like the question is, the program that I've outlined to you and this compared to the solution that you're looking for, where are you at on a scale of 1 to 10? If someone says something lower than a 10, then it's not a good fit.
Right.
It's either not a good fit, or there's something I haven't answered yet. So I'll say, okay, what's keeping you from being a 10? If those things can be answered, and it's just a lack of information, that they need a little bit more information, great, we can cover that. But if their belief is that this is not the right thing for me, I will never be able to help them get through that.
Right.
The difficult thing is if someone says they're a 10 out of 10, and this has happened before, and then I'm like, okay, let's go. Like, let's make this work. And I try to come up with solutions if they have some financial things like payment plans or whatever it is. Because if someone is volunteering the information that this is a 10 out of 10 and I want to do it, who am I to stop them? I'm here to make it work. Like, if you're a 10 out of 10 and I've already gone through all these other questions and I believe that you can do it and you believe in yourself, then what else do we need? So that also becomes difficult, because then it is at a point where I'm like, I'm a little bit more forceful, right? I'm like, let's do it. Like, what are we waiting for? Because what I recognize is that if people sometimes they just need permission to do it. It's like, I'm going to say that I'm 10 out of 10, but until I get permission from this person that it's okay to actually do it and actually go for my dreams, then I'm not going to do it. So people will still kind of like waffle sometimes after they say that. And it's like, okay, what's the true fear? Like, what are we actually talking about? Are we aligned here? Or are you just saying that? Or, you know, so there's a lot of interesting, there's a tough line with selling your program when you know it's really a good fit for somebody and it's going to change their life and it's going to do all these great things, and they've told you, they've like, yeah, let's do it. And then there's actual reasons why they shouldn't do it, right? So I'm always trying to create that line.
Right. Okay. So many questions about me. I like this. How has your perception of me evolved or stayed throughout our interaction? I love this episode. It's so Hashim centric.
Yeah, it's just your ego is just so inflated from this one. Yeah, so over time, I think when we were first interacting, I think there was less clarity. I think you still had a lot of raw skill and um, a lot of ability to do the things that you were saying you did, but maybe there wasn't as much confidence. I remember a time in which we spoke where you talked about kind of just trying to overcome some of the I don't
speed
know if it's like
issues.
the expectation of like how quickly you should be
Yeah.
completing things and things
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
So like over time, like as we worked together, so other context, like I ended up hiring you later on.
Yeah.
And what I watched over time was you be able to like increase that speed, get through some of that mental hurdle, and then also put yourself out there more. I think that's been something that you've done, but like doing a series like this or reaching out to people and asking them to like, hey, be my guest and let's talk about these crazy things. Like, I feel like that's more of an embodiment of who you actually want to be, is like
Right.
someone who's able to do things like this. So yeah, I've seen a lot of growth, a lot of change. And I also respected that what I was able to afford, like I respected that you found a value for yourself that was higher than what I was able to pay. And then we had a couple conversations about it. I was like, hey, this is my budget. This is what I'm looking at. I was like, I can't do that. And I was like, okay, totally respect that. So from the opposite side, where I didn't take you as a client, you also didn't take me as a client. So it's been fully returned. So thank you for that.
Very welcome.
But yeah, I think it shows, kind of a maturity and kind of a certainty, or at least a confidence that I think you grew into after some time.
Yeah. Yeah. I like the whole, my experience. I like that I could quantify how I was improving through speed with you.
Yeah.
So that was a good experience. Oh my goodness, another question about me. Look at that.
Look at that.
So just any country, any place like where you would like, this company or this country or this would be a good setting for you.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of companies that are prioritizing like asynchronous 4 days a week work. A place where you're able to grow and to learn. Kind of like, okay, so like my other assistant, Weston, did you ever meet him?
I know, I know of him virtually.
Yeah,
but
yeah. So he ended up working, like he's freelance and he works with a bunch of different clients now. And he works for an SEO agency who is US based, is like one of my friends runs the company, and they're like really awesome. That's been such a good experience for him. And I could see a similar situation working for you, where you work for a company that specializes in some skill set that you're really wanting to get better at, and learn from someone who's like been in the industry for 10, 20 years, whatever it is, and someone who's patient and willing to invest the time in teaching you certain things. And that's what he's gotten out of that experience, which has been awesome to see, because he's freelancing, he's working for them part-time, but they still invest a lot in him. And so I could see that being something really good for you, is finding like a fully remote, async focused company that is looking for people to train and develop in whatever way. Because you mentioned SEO, and I don't know if that's the route that you ended up going down. I don't think it is, but
yeah,
that's why it reminded me of that situation. Where you'd live, yeah, dude, if you're interested in like the plant medicines and things like that, like I have a hard time seeing myself outside of Latin America. Like Latin America is just the best place. Especially Mexico for me, but I've also had a lot of fun in Colombia. I've been to Peru. I've been to Chile. I've been to probably somewhere else too, but Colombia and Mexico are probably my two favorite.
Argentina.
I haven't been there. I heard it's not really a great time to go, but with the pandemic stuff, but yeah, I would love to go there. And a lot of people tell me I look Argentinian. So
Right.
especially here in Mexico, because I can speak Spanish. So if they overhear me talking in Spanish, I've been assumed to be Argentinian before.
Okay. Okay.
Great compliment. It's the best compliment of all.
Yeah. I'm specifically asking about Argentina because now I have a new obsession with Argentina because I met someone from there and they're telling me, like, describing the country, and it sounds like a country just specifically made for me, like a country of overthinkers, very intellectually inclined, and they're super like straightforward. So I was like, damn. And like they're the number one country in terms of psychologists. I don't know, like, and she was telling me, like, there, if you say like I'm going to my therapist, it's like saying I'm going to the gym. It's just so natural.
Yeah.
So next stop is Argentina.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay.
10 minutes.
Sure. Last question is, last in terms of the custom questions, does it surprise you that there isn't more attention to recruitment for remote employees outside of the country?
I don't get that impression. I think that that's increasing by a lot. I think it's only going to keep increasing.
You don't get that impression. Interesting.
Well, I've gotten the impression. Okay, so with where we're at right now and understanding the context of what it takes to hire people from other countries, I think we're starting to hit the other side of this, where it's going to become more common that companies are looking for people in other countries rather than the US. I think that, like, we're just at this. I mean, so the question is, are you surprised at something that I don't necessarily fundamentally agree with?
Right. So yes, so let's discuss the first one. The reason I'm asking this is that I noticed that lots of like the majority of postings, that is just yes,
100%. So the technology now that's being enabled through companies like Remote, companies like Deal, these global HR payroll companies, this is going to change everything. And I think very soon, like hiring and remote hiring, and I'm even working with a company right now to help them hire, and they look for people all over the world. The way they structure how they hire somebody is different,
right?
But their interest level is actually more so in people that are not in the US.
Okay, that's good then. So similar to this, one of the hidden question is, were you the transition to remote work after COVID, was it above your expectations, below your expectations, or as at your expectations?
Oh, I mean, not knowing that the pandemic was going to happen?
No, knowing that the pandemic happened.
Yeah.
So you said logically to yourself, okay, now there will be a transition to remote work.
Yeah. Above more. I mean, it's crazy, man. The level of normality that it's becoming the default. It's great. Right. I love it. I'm all for it, man. I'm all for it, as you know. So, but yeah, well above what I thought initially, because we also didn't know the severity of the pandemic.
Right.
And like how long it was going to actually take for things to go back to normal, which they still aren't. So.
Right. Makes sense. Okay, so 2 questions, and then you'll ask me a question. So the question is, why did you choose to write a book instead of your regular ways of content creation?
Well, I think the book is a culmination of like all of my other creations, because like all of my creative stuff, like having it immortalized in a book is a different level. Like it's a legacy play. It's something that allows me to reach more people. It allows me to make more money without being present. It allows me to have something that's just more accessible and more at the front. There's a lot of social proof that comes with creating a book. There's a lot of optics that look good when you're an author. And I love to write. Dude, I've been a writer my whole life, and it's always been a dream to like have a book. I've said it offhand, you know, like even when I was a kid. It's like, oh, like, you know, like thinking in my head, even just like, oh, I'm gonna write a book one day. But it never seemed like it could be a reality until now. And now it's like the perfect time. That's what I feel. There's never really a perfect time, but it's the most perfect time that it's been in my life. And I already have so much content around it that bridging the gap between the content that I have and the content that I need for the book is more a matter of like structure and more a matter of editing.
Right.
So that's been the most challenging part, other than, you know, building up the marketing engine and figuring out the Kickstarter and doing all this other stuff. But
right. Okay, so the last question is, you mentioned, I know that you try to apply essentialism to your life. What has there been any surprises along the way?
Yeah, it's not easy to do. I like barely do it. I have such a monkey brain with everything. Like I want to be doing a million things at once all the time. And it goes so, it's so unnatural for me to be an essentialist. So I find that I actually need a support system to help me figure that out. So I'm in a men's group, and a lot of the things that they have given me feedback on has been my lack of focus on the most important things. So, or just being spread very thin.
Right.
So for me, it's kind of like looking at, okay, I think what I'm realizing is like, I really need to use that. The surprise was, it's not like, I thought it was going to be a lot easier to implement in my head.
Yeah.
The surprise has been like the mental gymnastics that I do to justify doing something that at the end of the day I know is not like a high value activity or whatever.
Right. Okay, so it's your turn to ask me a question.
One question. Yeah, why did you choose me as a guest?
Why did I choose you as a guest?
Yeah, since this has been all about you, let's make it about me now.
Right. Because of the commonalities between us. So the commonalities, I would say, are remote job world, and then content creation, and then the whole kind of being upfront, not upfront, let's say, kind of like straightforward about your emotions and feelings and all of that stuff. And yeah, so if you go through the majority of my previous episodes, they were in things like content marketing. That was the biggest umbrella. So it was really, I thought it was important to have something in the remote world, because this is important for me as well. And one of the biggest things is that, again, your podcast is about getting outside of your comfort zone. So if somebody's interested in getting outside of their comfort zone, I think, okay, maybe they'd enjoy something like this.
Well, hopefully they did.
Yeah. We never know. Alrighty, thanks a lot, Jordan. I really appreciate you being on with me. Time to like plug in whatever you want to plug in. Go ahead, tell me what's going on.
Yeah, I've got my book coming out. I don't know when this episode is going to come out, but I'm going to have a Kickstarter from May to July for the book. So that's a good opportunity to snag a copy. Although if you're living outside of the US, the shipping is going to be somewhat expensive. So if you want to wait, I'll also have the book available on Amazon later in the year, probably in November, December. is the hope. So the Kickstarter is really to like kind of do the pre-funding and package it with like the course and package it with other cool things.
So tell me like what's the book about?
Yeah, the book is called Remote for Life. It focuses on helping people find flexible remote jobs to gain more freedom in their life in general. So it gives them pretty much a guide, a roadmap on like how to do that, no matter where they're at. If there's someone who's never worked remotely before, if there's someone who's working remotely now and they just want a new challenge, it's a great opportunity to get that information. So that will be, I don't know if you want to, like, LinkedIn is probably the best place to follow me, like Jordan Carroll on LinkedIn or theremotejobcoach.com. It's my website, and I'll have, a lot of updates on those things.
All right, sounds good. And I want to end with a line that you have, and I love this one. Keep wandering, you're not lost.
Yes.
All
Nice.
right, I'm gonna stop now.